Thanks for joining me today. This is Danny, and welcome to my beachfront FTP Infinity estate. Today we are going to be doing something that I've been excited about for a long time, and that is auto-crafting nether stars. So, I had mentioned in a previous episode that I thought it would be really cool if I could just go into my Emmy system and say, 1 nether star, please. Or however many, 10, 100, whatever, nether stars, please. And with 4 soul sand and 3 wither skulls, it would give me however many nether stars I asked for. And I have managed to do just that, although it was kind of a difficult process with a lot of trial and error. I started out down here and built kind of a test spawning area so that if something did happen to go wrong, it wouldn't destroy my base. And I have not tested this theory yet, so I'm actually going to be testing this with you today. So if this fails and makes a big mess and the wither gets loose or whatever, you'll get to watch. Aren't you excited? I'm pretty sure that's going to be high enough, but we'll find out. If the wither destroys our stuff, we'll just recreate it and try again. I've got plenty of resources to spare. Then, once I got it working safely, I brought it to my base, where I did end up actually setting the wither loose in my base. The big question is, if I spawn this guy, is he going to cause any damage to my base? So let's hope not. It shouldn't, because of course we just tested it over there and it didn't seem to cause any problems there. So hopefully we'll have a similar... Okay, keep going. Here we go, here we go. Okay, okay. What? What? Why is he still alive? No, no, no! No! Why is he still alive? Oh my god. Show you the final result, and then I'll show you how I did it. So we can go into our Emmy system and say, let's say I want 2 nether stars. It says, okay, we need 8 soul sand, 6 wither skeleton skulls to craft 2 nether stars. Right? Boom. Now we sit here and wait for a second. Or 2. Or 10. There's 1, and there's 2. There's our nether stars. It's not the prettiest build in the world, but it's quite functional. Alright, let's see this guy in action. So we go into our Emmy system, and we say we want 2 nether stars, or however many. There goes 1, and there goes another. They go down there. As soon as they're created, whoa! As soon as they're created, they disappear. And so here's how this thing works. Hey, Slender TT. You want to see how it works too? I'm going to put a torch in here. Of course, it's going to get destroyed the next time we spawn a wither. But so I've got a tower, or kind of a pit here, I suppose you could call it. The wither spawns up here and then falls down, because when the wither... As soon as the wither is spawned, he becomes vulnerable to gravity, and he falls down there, just like Slender TT did. And then down here, way at the bottom of the pit, excuse me, I have a mob grinder. This is a Draconic Evolution mob grinder, and what's cool about this thing is 2 things. 1, it's blast resistant, so it will not be destroyed when the wither when the wither spawns and creates the big blast. And it also kills the wither in pretty much instantaneously. So as soon as the wither is spawned, it is destroyed. And back here, we have a vacuum hopper. Thank you. back here we have a vacuum hopper, and what the vacuum hopper does is basically works just like a vacuum chest, but it also pulls XP. So we'll take a look at that in more detail in a second, but basically we have the wither spawning up here and then dropping down here so that when it blows up it doesn't destroy our spawning machines. So to spawn the wither we're using Steve's Factory Manager and a chest, and then of course our Emmy Interface. And the drop chest is basically where the Emmy, because the Emmy Interface is on the drop chest, so the Emmy Interface, the Emmy system will basically drop our 4 soul sand and our 3 wither skeleton skulls right here in this chest. And then Steve's Factory Manager will grab those things and put 1 each in the block gates that you see here. Now a block gate is an inventory block, similar to a chest or something like that, except that its inventory is whatever is placed in the world in the block that it's facing. So these guys, these little rings here, show that the block gate is facing in this direction. So, and when you place a block gate, it faces toward you. And when you first place the block gate, it looks like that, which means that its inventory is going to be the 2 blocks in front of it. So after you place these things, you have to shift right click with an empty hand in order to change them to look at just the block directly in front of it. And Steve's Factory Manager is capable of placing blocks at the block gate, and it's also capable of picking them up. In this case, of course, we're just placing the blocks. And then what happens is the wither is spawned. The last thing that gets placed is a skull, so otherwise it doesn't work properly. The wither is killed and its items are sucked up into the vacuum hopper. Now the vacuum hopper will output items on whichever side that you specify. So you come in, you go into this interface and you click on the side of the vacuum hopper that you want to output to, and then you click which side you want the XP to output to, and this thing will output, it'll pick up XP orbs and it'll output liquid XP, which you can then use in your Ender IO machines or in your Experience Obelisk if you want to make them a part of your player XP. And then down here we've got some power cables to power the spawner. Don't forget to do that now, because I did. When I moved this thing from my test area up here, I actually forgot to power the spawner, and I ended up with a wither loose in my base. And then I've also got fluid pipes. I'm using ender fluid pipes here, and item conduits connected into the vacuum hopper in order to pull all the items back into my Emmy system. Let's take a look at this at this logic. So our inventory manager, as I mentioned, is pulling the items out of this chest, and it's placing 1 each in each of these block gates. And it has to place, of course, the 4 soul sand here, and then it has to place the 3 wither skulls up here, but it has to place them after the soul sand is placed. Otherwise, it just ends up, you just end up with 3 skulls sitting there, attached to the block itself rather than being attached to the soul sand. So here's our logic. So we've got a trigger that runs every 3 seconds. And the reason it runs every 3 seconds is because that's about how long it takes for the wither to get out of the way, for the wither to actually start dropping out of the way enough where we can start placing more blocks. Otherwise, what happens is it'll place the next blocks for the next wither, and the wither, as it's dropping down, it'll end up destroying the blocks that it comes in contact with. So every 3 seconds, Steve's Factory Manager is going to check this condition. Does the chest have soul sand and wither skeleton skulls? And we have to right click to specify the amount. So I only want it to run when it finds exactly 4 soul sand, and we right click this, specify amount, 3 wither skulls. And if you haven't worked with this before, basically what you do is you click on this, and then you can actually start typing stuff in, and then you click for the item that you want, and then you right click it to specify the amount. Of course, in this case we want to delete that, but so 4 soul sand, 3 wither skulls. If that's true, then we go into this flow control. If it's false, we don't do anything. So the flow control is this guy right here. When you first place it down, it looks like this. We want to change the connection to split 5 outputs. So we have one, so that gives us 1 input and 5 outputs. And then if we look under our split functions, it can be sequential or it can be split. We're going to leave it at sequential, which basically means it's going to do one of these, one right after another. And when it's basically almost instantaneous, but it's basically going to start on this side, do this, 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 and then this. Then we've got our 4 input outputs to place our 4 soul sand. Now you could use variables and do a for each for this, but since there's only 4 and there's only ever going to be 4, I just decided to do 4 separate input outputs. So the input for each of these is going to be exactly the same. We're looking in our chest for 1 piece of soul sand. So in this case, we do soul sand, we right click on it, we say specify amount 1, because we wanted to place 1 piece of soul sand in each block gate. So then our output is going to be one of our block gates. And we have 7 block gates altogether, and we want to place the soul sand in the 4 lower block gates. So we've got block gate at Y79, Y79, 1 at Y78, and then another at Y79. These first 3 are all at Y80, so those are the top block gates. And then we can specify a whitelist soul sand, or we can just blacklist nothing and leave it as the default because it doesn't matter, we're already filtering up here. So then we just do the exact same thing, and what I actually did is once I created this input is I dragged it over here to this copy thing, and it'll create another one, another exact replica of that, and I just did that 4 times because in each case we're doing the exact same thing. We're looking in the input chest for 1 soul sand. So all 4 of these are exactly the same. These 4 are almost identical, except the inventory we're selecting is different. For that one we had selected this block gate, for this one we're selecting this one. Here we're selecting this one. And finally here we're selecting that one. So that's going to set down our 4 soul sand. And then we have an output going into another trigger. So when you set down a trigger by default, it basically works at a time interval of 1 second. This trigger, for this trigger, what we're doing is we're setting the connection to a delayed trigger. And that will end up giving us an input on the top. See, by default it has no input on the top, but if we make it a delayed trigger, we get an input on the top, and then we can set the interval. In this case, I have 5 ticks. So we're going out from here for our flow control into our trigger. And then we're going out from our trigger into a flow control. So now what's going to happen is it's going to place these 4 block gates, these 4 soul sands into the block gate, and then it's going to wait 5 ticks because of this trigger, and then it's going to go into this flow control and do these 3 input outputs, which are, as you might guess, the pulling out of the input chest our wither skeleton skull. And here again we want to right click and select 1 so that we only grab 1 skull for each block gate. So then our output is going to be our block gates. And in this case I just left it as default blacklist because it doesn't matter, we're already filtering up here. So our block gate, here's our block gate at Y80, so this is one of our top block gates. And then this one is going into the next block gate, and this one is going into the other one. And here again, I copied the input over here, and that's it. So we've got our trigger that runs every 3 seconds. It checks to see if there's 4 soul sand and 3 wither skulls, and if so, we run this flow control, setting 1 soul sand from the chest to our 4 block gates, and then we have a trigger, a delayed trigger that runs every 5 ticks, that then sets up the 3 skulls, whatever, and that's it. That's how it works. So now we can say however many, we can spawn as many withers as we want. Okay, so Nether star. Let's say 5. Start. There we go. There's 1, 2. Look out. 3, 4. I'm trying to demonstrate this. 5. And there we have it. So now if we look in our Emmy system, we have our 5 Nether stars and all my others that I've created during testing. So that's it. There's our Nether star auto-crafting. So now, what's really great about this is if we're doing recipes like in Draconic Evolution, where we have our wyvern cores that need Nether stars, we can now auto-craft wyvern cores, and if we don't have enough Nether stars, it'll just spawn some withers for us. And we never have to never have to have another wither fight, or we won't even have to think about spawning withers anymore. It'll just do it all for us. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please click the like button, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I will do my best to answer them for you. So, thanks for watching.